A billionaire collapsed on the street, dressed in rags, ignored by hundreds, until a cleaning lady with barely enough for herself stopped to help. What she didn't know would change her life forever. A penthouse in chaos, a hidden will, and a family secret that zhen liang le zheng ge cheng shi. Stay until the end, because what this woman discovered in that mansion will leave you speechless. It was a cold November morning in Manhattan, the year 2003. The streets of New York buzzed with their usual chaos, people rushing to work, taxis honking, steam rising from the subway vents. On the corner of Fifth Avenue and 52nd Street, a man lay slumped against a building, wrapped in a torn, filthy coat. His face was hidden beneath a matted beard, his hands black with grime. Passers-by stepped over him, around him, their eyes fixed straight ahead. Some pulled their children closer, others wrinkled their noses in disgust. Not one person stopped. Margaret Chen had been working as a cleaning lady at the Plaza Hotel for 17 years. She was 52 years old, a widow, mother of 2 grown children who rarely called. Every morning she walked the same route from her tiny studio apartment in Queens to Midtown Manhattan, saving the $2.75 the subway would cost. That morning, her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and her lower back throbbed from scrubbing bathroom tiles the night before. She carried a paper bag with a bagel inside, her only breakfast. When she saw the man on the ground, something made her stop. Maybe it was the way his hand trembled. Maybe it was the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Margaret had seen plenty of homeless people in her years in the city, but something about this man looked different. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't moving at all. She knelt down beside him, ignoring the stares of passing businessmen in their expensive suits. "Sir? Sir, are you okay?" Her accent carried the melody of her Cantonese roots, softened by decades in America. The man's eyes fluttered open, cloudy and unfocused. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Margaret pressed her hand to his forehead. He was burning up with fever. She looked around desperately. "Someone call an ambulance, please." But the crowd flowed past like water around a stone. No one stopped. No one cared. Margaret's heart pounded. She couldn't just leave him here. She pulled out her cell phone, an old Nokia she'd bought second-hand, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. "There's a man. He's very sick. Corner of 5th and 52nd. Please hurry." While she waited, she opened her paper bag and pulled out her bagel. She tore off a small piece and held it to the man's lips. "Here, try to eat something." He turned his head away weakly, so she opened her water bottle instead, tilting it carefully to his mouth. He managed a few sips before coughing. "It's okay," Margaret whispered. "Help is coming." The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. The paramedics loaded the man onto a stretcher. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, turned to Margaret. "Are you family?" Margaret shook her head. "No, I found him." The paramedic nodded. "You probably saved his life. He's in bad shape, severe dehydration, possible pneumonia. Another hour out here and—" She didn't finish the sentence. Margaret watched the ambulance pull away, lights flashing. Then she picked up her bag and continued walking to work. She was already late. 3 days passed. Margaret forgot about the man on the street. She had her own problems. Her rent was going up again. Her daughter Linda needed money for her son's school supplies. The radiator in her apartment had stopped working, and the landlord refused to fix it. She wore 2 sweaters to bed and could see her breath in the morning. On Thursday afternoon, as Margaret was cleaning the lobby bathrooms at the plaza, her supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, found her. "Margaret, there's someone here to see you." Margaret looked up from the toilet she was scrubbing, confused. "To see me?" Mrs. Rodriguez's expression was strange, something between suspicion and curiosity. "Yeah, he's waiting in the main lobby. Says it's important." Margaret pulled off her rubber gloves and smoothed down her uniform. Her heart raced with worry. Had something happened to Linda, to her son Marcus? She hurried to the lobby, her mind spinning with terrible possibilities. Then she stopped dead in her tracks. Standing near the concierge desk was a man in an impeccable charcoal suit that probably cost more than Margaret made in 6 months. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven, revealing strong features and piercing blue eyes. But Margaret recognized him immediately. It was the man from the street, the beggar. Only he wasn't a beggar at all. "Mrs. Chen," he said, walking toward her with a slight limp. His voice was deep, cultured, the accent of old money and private schools. "I've been looking for you." Margaret's mouth opened, but no words came out. Up close, she could see the resemblance clearly now. This man looked like the photographs she'd seen in magazines in the hotel lobby. William Ashford, the hotel chain magnate, the real estate developer. The billionaire whose face appeared in the business section of the New York Times. I don't understand," Margaret finally managed. William Ashford smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "3 days ago, you stopped to help a man everyone else ignored. You gave him your breakfast. You called for help. You waited with him." He paused, his eyes glistening. "That man was me." Margaret felt dizzy. "But why were you dressed like that?" "May we speak somewhere private?" William asked, glancing at the growing crowd of hotel staff and guests who had stopped to stare. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been eavesdropping shamelessly, suddenly snapped into action. "You can use the manager's office. Mr. Ashford, it would be an honor." She practically bowed as she led them down a corridor. Once inside the office with the door closed, William gestured for Margaret to sit. She perched nervously on the edge of a leather chair while he settled into the one across from her, wincing slightly as he moved. "I'm still recovering," he explained. "Pneumonia, as you probably guessed. The doctors said if I'd been out there much longer." He shook his head. "But that's not what I came to talk about." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Mrs. Chen, I'm going to tell you something very few people know. For the past 5 years, I've been doing this. Once or twice a year, I disguise myself and spend time on the streets, sometimes as a homeless person, sometimes as a janitor or a construction worker. I want to see how people really are when they think nobody important is watching." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "Why?" "Because I'm looking for something," William said quietly. "Someone, actually. You see, I built an empire worth $3.2 billion. I have hotels in 47 cities. I have a penthouse on Park Avenue and homes in London, Paris, and Tokyo, but I have no one to leave it to." His voice cracked slightly. "My wife died 8 years ago. We never had children. My brother passed last year. I have nephews and nieces, cousins, business partners, all circling like vultures, waiting for me to die so they can fight over the scraps." He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. "I've watched people step over me, spit near me. One man kicked me and told me to get a job. A woman dumped her coffee on me because I was blocking the sidewalk. These are people who smile to my face at charity galas, who call me sir and shake my hand when I'm William Ashford. But when they think I'm nobody, they show me who they really are." Margaret sat very still, processing this. "And you're testing people." "In a way, yes," William admitted, turning back to face her. "I'm looking for someone with genuine kindness. Someone who helps because it's right, not because there's something in it for them. Someone who sees a suffering human being and responds with compassion." He moved closer, his gaze intense. "In 5 years, Mrs. Chen, hundreds of people have passed me by. Thousands, probably. You're the first person who stopped, the first person who helped, the first person who cared." Margaret felt tears spring to her eyes. I couldn't leave you there." "Exactly," William said softly. "You couldn't leave me there. Despite having so little yourself, you gave me your breakfast, your water, your time. You were late for work because of me." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "I want to offer you a position, Mrs. Chen, as my personal assistant. The salary is $250,000 a year, plus benefits, health insurance, retirement plan." Margaret's vision blurred. That was more than 10 times what she made now. More money than she'd ever dreamed of having. I can't. I don't have the education for something like that. I only finished high school. I don't know computers or... "You have something far more valuable than education," William interrupted gently. "You have character, integrity, compassion. Those things can't be taught." He placed the card on the desk between them. "Think about it, please. My private number is on that card. Call me when you're ready." He moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing, Mrs. Chen. Your daughter Linda. I understand her son Marcus needs school supplies, and your radiator is broken." Margaret gasped. How did he know these things? William smiled. "I make it my business to learn about people who interest me. There's an envelope at the front desk with your name on it. Consider it a thank you for saving my life. No strings attached whether you take the job or not." Then he was gone, leaving Margaret alone in the office, her hands trembling as she picked up the business card. The embossed lettering felt heavy in her fingers, like it carried weight beyond mere paper. That evening, Margaret picked up the envelope from the front desk. Inside was a check for $50,000. She had to sit down on a lobby sofa, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. $50,000. She could fix her apartment, pay off her debts, help Linda with Marcus, maybe even take a vacation for the first time in 20 years. But the job offer terrified her. What did she know about being a personal assistant to a billionaire? She was a cleaning lady. She scrubbed toilets and mopped floors. How could she possibly fit into his world? Margaret didn't sleep that night. She lay in her cold apartment, wrapped in blankets, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her life. 52 years old, and what did she have to show for it? Aching joints, a studio apartment that was falling apart, children who barely spoke to her. She'd spent decades making other people's spaces clean and beautiful, while her own life stayed small and grey. What did she have to lose? The next morning, Margaret called the number on the card. William answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Chen, I was hoping you'd call." "I'll take the job," Margaret said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But I need to learn. I need you to teach me." "Of course," William replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Can you start Monday?" Margaret's first day at Ashford Tower, the headquarters of William's empire, was overwhelming. The building was 60 stories of glass and steel in Midtown Manhattan. Her new office was on the 58th floor, right next to William's. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The desk was larger than her entire kitchen back in Queens. William introduced her to the staff. Most of them looked at her with barely concealed disdain. This cleaning lady from nowhere, suddenly given one of the most coveted positions in the company. Their smiles were plastic, their handshakes limp. Margaret felt their judgment like a physical weight. "Don't worry about them," William said quietly as they rode the elevator back to his office. "They'll come around once they see what you're capable of." But it wasn't easy. Margaret spent the first month feeling like an imposter. She struggled with the computer systems, accidentally deleted important emails, and once transferred a crucial business call to the wrong person. The other assistants whispered behind her back. She caught them laughing at her accent, mimicking the way she pronounced certain words. One person was particularly cruel. Vanessa Sterling, William's nephew's wife was a tall, elegant woman who ran the company's PR department. She had been angling to become William's right hand for years, and Margaret's sudden appearance had clearly disrupted her plans. "It's admirable, really," Vanessa said one day in the break room, her voice dripping with false sweetness while her friends giggled around her. "William's little charity project, though I do wonder how long it will last. Some people just aren't cut out for this world, no matter how much money you throw at them." Margaret kept her head down and said nothing, but the words stung. That night, she almost called William to quit. She had the phone in her hand, his number pulled up on the screen. But then she thought about Marcus, Linda's son, and how excited he'd been when she'd bought him new school clothes with the money from William's check. She thought about her new apartment, a real one-bedroom in a building with heat that actually worked. She thought about the look on William's face when he told her she had character and integrity. She put the phone down and went to bed. Slowly, painfully, Margaret learned. William was patient, never condescending. He showed her how to manage his calendar, how to screen his calls, how to prepare briefings for his meetings. She had a sharp memory and a keen eye for detail, skills she'd developed from years of noticing what needed cleaning, what was out of place. She began to apply those same skills to his business life. She noticed, for instance, that his nephew Jason always scheduled meetings right before lunch, when William's blood sugar was low and he was more likely to agree to things. She started making sure William had a snack beforehand. She noticed that certain executives would slip problematic reports into large stacks of documents, hoping William would sign without reading carefully. She began reviewing everything first, flagging items that needed his attention. William noticed too. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon, 3 months into her employment. "Better than I expected, and I expected a lot." Margaret smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt valued for her mind, not just her labor. But not everyone was pleased with her success. Vanessa's hostility grew more obvious. She began spreading rumors that Margaret and William were having an affair, that the only reason a cleaning lady would be given such a position was if she was providing other services. The gossip spread through the office like wildfire. Margaret heard it all. The whispers stopped when she entered a room. Colleagues who had started warming up to her suddenly became cold again. One morning, she found a crude drawing taped to her office door, a stick figure on its knees in front of another stick figure, with her name written underneath. She tore it down before William could see it, but her hands shook with humiliation and rage. That evening, as she and William were reviewing the next day's schedule, she finally broke down. "Mr. Ashford, I need to talk to you about something." He looked up from the documents he'd been reading, immediately attentive. "What's wrong?" The whole story spilled out, the whispers, the rumors, the drawing. Margaret's voice cracked as she spoke. "I can't do this anymore. They'll never accept me. They'll never see me as anything but a cleaning lady who slept her way into this job." William's face darkened with anger. "Give me names." "No," Margaret said firmly. "That's not who I am. I don't want you to fight my battles. I needed you to know why I have to resign." "You're not resigning," William said, his voice brooking no argument. He stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned around, and Margaret saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. "My wife, Catherine, was a kindergarten teacher when I met her," he said quietly. "She came from a working-class family in Brooklyn. My parents were horrified when I told them I wanted to marry her. They said she wasn't suitable, that she would embarrass the family, that I could do so much better." He smiled sadly at the memory. "I married her anyway. Best decision I ever made. She kept me grounded, reminded me what actually mattered in life. When she died, I lost my compass." He walked over to Margaret's desk and sat on the edge of it, something he never did. It made him seem more human, less like the untouchable billionaire. These people who mock you, who spread vicious rumors, they're the same ones who would have mocked Catherine. They worship money and status, and they can't comprehend that someone might have value beyond those things. Don't let them win, Margaret. Don't let them drive you away. Margaret wiped her eyes. But how do I deal with it? By being so damn good at your job that they can't dismiss you, William said simply. By proving every single day that you belong here, and by remembering that their opinion of you doesn't define your worth. You define your worth. So Margaret stayed, and she worked harder than ever. She arrived earlier than everyone else and left later. She memorized William's preferences, anticipated his needs before he voiced them. She learned the business inside and out, studying financial reports late into the night, asking questions, absorbing information like a sponge. 6 months into the job, Margaret spotted something wrong in a contract the legal team had prepared for a major hotel acquisition in Chicago. A clause buried in the fine print would have given the sellers an option to buy back the property at a below-market rate if certain conditions were met. It was subtle, the kind of thing designed to slip past notice. But Margaret noticed. She brought it to William's attention the night before the signing. He read it, his face growing pale. If I'd signed this, it could have cost us hundreds of millions down the line. He looked at her with genuine awe. How did you catch this? The legal team didn't catch this. I read everything carefully, Margaret said simply. You taught me that details matter. William called his lawyers immediately. The contract was renegotiated, the problematic clause removed. The acquisition went through successfully, and word of Margaret's sharp eye spread through the company. Suddenly the whispers changed. People started coming to her with questions, asking her opinion. Vanessa stopped making snide comments, though her resentment simmered just below the surface. A year into her employment, William's health began to decline. The pneumonia had damaged his lungs more than he'd admitted, and he developed complications. There were days he could barely make it through a meeting without coughing fits. Margaret noticed he was losing weight, that his suits hung looser on his frame. You need to see a doctor, she insisted after a particularly bad episode. I have seen doctors, William replied irritably. They tell me I'm getting old. Not much to be done about that. But Margaret persisted. She researched specialists, made appointments, literally drove him to consultations when he tried to cancel. The doctors discovered a serious pulmonary condition, one that required surgery. William was terrified, though he tried to hide it. The night before the operation, he called Margaret to his penthouse. She'd never been there before. The apartment was enormous, decorated with priceless art, but it felt empty, cold. There were no photographs, no personal touches. It was a showplace, not a home. William looked small, sitting in his leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. If something happens tomorrow, he began, but Margaret cut him off. Nothing is going to happen. You have the best surgeon in the country. You're going to be fine. But if something does happen, William continued firmly, I want you to know that you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope, purpose. You reminded me that there's still genuine goodness in this world. He pulled out an envelope from his pocket. This is for you. Don't open it unless... Just keep it safe. Margaret took the envelope with trembling hands. You're going to be fine, she repeated, her voice breaking. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Margaret sat in the hospital waiting room the entire time, drinking terrible coffee and pacing the floor. Linda came to sit with her for a while, surprised by how much her mother cared about this man she'd known for barely a year. He's more than just my boss, Margaret tried to explain. He saw something in me that no one else ever had. He gave me a chance when I had nothing. Linda squeezed her mother's hand. He's lucky to have you, Mom. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face was grave. The surgery went well, But the next 48 hours are critical. He's not out of the woods yet. Margaret stayed at the hospital. She slept in the chair beside William's bed, waking every time a monitor beeped or a nurse came in. On the second night, William's condition deteriorated. His oxygen levels dropped, his heart rate became erratic. Doctors rushed in, and Margaret was pushed out into the hallway, where she pressed her hands against the wall and prayed for the first time in years. "Please," she whispered, "please don't take him. Not yet. There's still so much he has to do." William survived that night, and the next. Slowly, painfully, he recovered. Margaret was there every step of the way, managing his company from her laptop in his hospital room, feeding him ice chips, reading him reports when he was too weak to hold the papers himself. "You should be at the office," he mumbled one afternoon, his voice hoarse. "The company needs you." "The company can wait," Margaret said firmly. "You need me more." It took 3 months for William to recover enough to return to work part-time. He was frailer now, his steps slower, but his mind remained sharp, and something had changed between him and Margaret. The professional distance had collapsed. They'd become something more than employer and employee, friends, family even. Vanessa noticed the shift, and it infuriated her. Her husband, Jason, William's nephew, was supposed to be next in line to run the company. But with Margaret so close to William, their position felt threatened. They began plotting. It started with small acts of sabotage. Documents going missing from Margaret's desk, meetings getting scheduled without her knowledge, rumors being spread about financial improprieties, nothing they could be directly tied to, but enough to create chaos and make Margaret look incompetent. Margaret noticed, but she said nothing to William. He was still recovering, and she didn't want to stress him. Instead, she started keeping meticulous records of everything. Emails, calendar invitations, copies of documents. When a report she'd prepared mysteriously vanished before an important board meeting, she had a backup. When Jason claimed she'd never informed him of a schedule change, she had the email chain to prove otherwise. The final confrontation came at the company's annual gala, a black-tie event at the Plaza Hotel. Margaret attended reluctantly, uncomfortable in the evening gown William had insisted on buying her. She felt out of place among the designer dresses and diamond jewelry, the air thick with expensive perfume and entitled laughter. Vanessa cornered her by the bar. She'd had too much champagne, her words slurring slightly. "You think you're so special, don't you? William's little pet. But what happens when he dies, You think any of us will keep you around? You'll be back to scrubbing toilets where you belong." Margaret kept her voice calm and low. "I never asked for any of this, Vanessa. I just tried to help someone who needed it. If that threatens you, that says more about you than it does about me." Vanessa's face flushed with rage. She raised her hand as if to slap Margaret, but someone caught her wrist. "William!" He'd appeared silently beside them, his expression colder than Margaret had ever seen it. "I think you've had enough to drink, Vanessa," he said quietly. "Jason, take your wife home." Jason rushed over, his face pale. "Uncle William, I'm sure she meant every word," William interrupted. "We'll discuss this Monday in my office, both of you." The weekend passed in tense silence. Monday morning, Margaret arrived at the office to find Jason and Vanessa already in William's office. Their lawyer was with them. Margaret's stomach dropped. This was serious. William called her in. "Close the door, Margaret. Sit down." She sat, her hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding. William looked at his nephew and his wife. "I'm going to make this very simple. I've tolerated your schemes and your hostility toward Margaret because you're family. But family doesn't give you the right to abuse the people I care about. So here's what's going to happen. Jason, you're going to resign from your position as VP of Development. I'll give you a generous severance package, and a recommendation for positions elsewhere. "Vanessa, you're fired effective immediately." Vanessa shot to her feet. "You can't do this. We've given years to this company, all because of some cleaning lady who—" "Watch your next words very carefully," William said, his voice like ice. "Margaret Chen has more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire body. She's earned her place here through hard work and genuine compassion. You've been coasting on your husband's family connection and your own sense of entitlement. Now get out of my office." Jason started to argue, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm and shook his head. They knew they had no leverage. William owned the company outright. His word was final. They left, Vanessa's heels clicking furiously on the marble floor. When they were gone, Margaret let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," William said, "because there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been putting off for too long." He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "Open it." Inside was a legal document. Margaret's eyes scanned the dense text, not understanding at first. Then certain phrases jumped out at her. Primary beneficiary, controlling interest, executive authority. She looked up at William, confused. "What is this?" "It's my will," William said quietly. "I'm leaving you the company, Margaret. 51% of shares, which gives you controlling interest. The other 49% is split between various charities and a trust fund for Catherine's family. But you'll be in charge. The board will answer to you." Margaret felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "I can't. William, I'm not qualified to run a billion-dollar company." "You're more qualified than anyone else I know," William countered. "You understand what this business should be about. Not just profit margins and stock prices, but the people who work here, the guests who stay in our hotels, the communities we serve. You have the heart this company needs. The rest you can learn." "But your family has proven they care more about money than people," William said flatly. "I've set up trust funds for my nieces and nephews, enough to live comfortably forever. But this company, my legacy, I want it in hands I trust. Your hands." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Why me? Really? After everything, why me?" William smiled, that same gentle smile from the day they met in the hotel lobby. "Because when I was lying on that street, dying and alone, you were the only one who saw me. Not William Ashford the billionaire, just a human being who needed help. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know what I could offer you. You helped me because it was the right thing to do. That's the kind of person I want carrying on what Catherine and I built together." Margaret clutched the folder to her chest, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it," William said. "Say you'll take care of this place when I'm gone. Say you'll remember that business should have a heart, that success means nothing if we forget our humanity along the way." "I will," Margaret whispered. "I promise. I will." William relaxed back in his chair, looking more at peace than she'd ever seen him. "Good. Now, there's a lot of work to do. We need to restructure the executive team, and I want to start a new initiative providing job training and placement for people who are homeless or in transitional housing. I figure you might have some insights on that." Margaret laughed through her tears. "I might have a few ideas." William lived for another 3 years, good years, during which he and Margaret worked side by side, transforming the Ashford Hotel Group into a company known not just for luxury, but for compassion. They created programs for hiring people from marginalized communities, providing them with training, support, and opportunities. They increased wages for cleaning staff and started a tuition reimbursement program. Under Margaret's influence, the company became a model for ethical business practices. When William finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 78, Margaret was holding his hand. His last words to her were simple. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing me." The reading of the will caused exactly the uproar William had predicted. Jason and several other relatives contested it, claiming Margaret had manipulated a sick old man. The legal battle dragged on for 18 months. But William had been thorough in documenting his wishes, and he'd been very clear about his mental competence. In the end, the will stood. Margaret Chen, former cleaning lady from Queens, became the CEO and majority owner of the Ashford Hotel Group. The business press had a field day. Some called it the most unusual succession in corporate history. Others predicted the company would collapse within a year. They were wrong. Under Margaret's leadership, the company thrived. She promoted from within, focusing on talent and character rather than pedigree and connections. She expanded the job training programs, creating pathways for thousands of people to escape poverty. She never forgot where she came from, and she made sure the company didn't either. Years later, a reporter asked her about that day on Fifth Avenue, the day that changed everything. Margaret thought carefully before answering. "I think about it every day," she said, "not because of what I gained, though I'm grateful for all of it, but because it taught me something important. We walk past people every single day who need help. We ignore them because we're busy, because we're uncomfortable, because we tell ourselves it's not our problem. But what if we stopped? What if we looked? What if we helped? You never know what might happen. You never know whose life you might save, or how they might save yours in return." She paused, her eyes distant. "William gave me opportunities I never dreamed possible, but the real gift was showing me that I had value, that my compassion mattered, that the things I'd always thought made me weak, my tendency to care, my inability to walk past suffering, those things were actually my greatest strengths." The reporter scribbled notes. "Any advice for our readers?" Margaret smiled. "Be kind. Help when you can. See people. Really see them, not just their circumstances or their appearance. And remember that you never know what might happen when you choose compassion over convenience. Sometimes the person you help might be a billionaire in disguise, but more often they're just someone who needs to know that they matter, that someone in this world cares whether they live or die, and honestly, that's worth even more." Margaret Chen ran the Ashford Hotel Group for 22 more years before retiring at age 74. Under her leadership, the company doubled in size and became consistently ranked as one of the best employers in America. She established a foundation in William and Catherine Ashford's name that provided scholarships and job training for thousands of people. Her daughter Linda eventually joined the company, working her way up through the ranks to become VP of Human Resources. Her grandson Marcus, the little boy who'd needed school supplies all those years ago, became a doctor. He often told people his grandmother taught him the most important lesson of his life, that your circumstances don't define your worth, and that everyone deserves compassion and a chance to prove themselves. Margaret never forgot that cold November morning in 2003. She kept a photograph on her desk of her and William, taken at the hotel's 50th anniversary gala, both of them laughing at some shared joke. Beside it was something else, a torn piece of paper bag, the one that had held her bagel that morning. She'd kept it all these years as a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. That the person lying on the street might not be who you think they are, but they're always someone who matters. That wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the connections we make and the compassion we show. And that sometimes when you give away your only breakfast to help a stranger, the universe has a way of giving you back more than you could ever imagine. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever helped a stranger when everyone else walked by? Or maybe you witnessed someone else showing incredible kindness. Drop your story in the comments below, because these real-life moments of compassion deserve to be shared. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another inspiring story. Sometimes the most powerful reminder we can get is that kindness still exists in this world, And it starts with people like you.